You know, I originally was supposed to shoot this really long, big video today that I've been pushing off for the last 2 months, but then I saw Ne Zha 2, and I think we need to talk about that. Also, yes, I am trying to go for Ne Zha with this little getup in this Walmart vest. No, I never did work at Walmart, if you're wondering. I just have this because my brother had it, but then he didn't want it anymore. And no, he never worked at Walmart either. But also, at the same time, I debated on whether or not I should do this shirtless, because Ne Zha is also shirtless. But then I realized I'd probably end up looking more like this guy. Ne Zha 2 is out in theaters right now and is the sequel to the 2019 film Ne Zha. Yes, I know, shocker. Ne Zha 2 is the sequel to Ne Zha. Who would have guessed? Next you're gonna tell me Frozen 2 is the sequel to Frozen. No, not that Frozen, I meant this Frozen, that one where the people are in like the chairlift. After the tribulation, and although the souls of Ne Zha and Al Bing were preserved, their physical bodies would soon be completely destroyed. Tai Yi Zhen Ren, I am so hoping I said that right, plans to use the 7-colored lotus to reshape their physical forms, but in the process of reshaping, they encounter numerous difficulties. Wow, that was a terrible plot synopsis, guys. That's just the beginning of the movie, but it's the one I kept finding all over the internet, so I just kind of went with it. So when it comes to the first Ne Zha, which I had only watched for the first time a few hours before going to see this newest one, I enjoyed watching it, but it's one where I didn't know my immediate opinion afterwards. While the movie is visually striking, very well animated, and I did like the character of Ne Zha, I will say that my biggest issue for me personally was that it was kind of hard to follow. This movie drops so much folklore in your ass in just 3 minutes that after a little bit, I just kind of accepted it and played along. But at the same time, while this isn't an anime, I've seen enough anime to where some of this was just normal to me at this point. People always use that phrase when pigs fly, and this movie literally has a fat man flying on a pig, but you know what? It just makes sense in the context of this world. But now we have Ne Zha 2, which honestly came the flying fuck out of nowhere. Yeah, I think you guys have put together by now that I did not go see this because it was in theaters. I had to go see it because of all the box office records that's breaking right now. If you haven't been keeping up with movie news recently, especially in the animation community, last summer, Inside Out 2 took the crown as the highest grossing animated movie of all time, beating out Frozen 2 and the 2019 Lion King. Thank Christ. But let me just say that that didn't last long because, ladies and gentlemen, say hello to your new highest grossing animated movie of all time. That's not a joke. Somehow, within less than 2 weeks, this little film that most of the general public has never heard of managed to cross $1 billion overseas alone and is now on its way to be the first animated movie to pass $2 billion. This is a milestone unlike anything we've ever seen before. This has managed to beat all the major studios in less than 2 freaking weeks. Disney and Pixar ain't got shit on Ne Zha 2. And you honestly don't know how good it feels to say that. So, with that in mind, I had to stop everything I was doing to go see if it was all worth it. I mean, you all know I love animation and that I love to support smaller animated movies, especially foreign ones, so this was right up my alley. Actually, calling this a smaller film just seems so disrespectful because this movie is not just massive, but is just an all-around spectacle. Brave New World ain't got shit on visuals compared to Ne Zha 2. The best way I can describe the look, feel, and aesthetic of this movie is that it has the chaotic energy of an anime mixed with an Indian action film, think something like Brahmastra or RRR, but with the size, scope, and scale of Dune Part 2. All brought to you in some of the most beautiful animation I've ever seen in a fully CG animated movie. I honestly cannot think of another film that looks like it and exceeds the original in every way. This thing is over 2 hours and 23 minutes long, making it the longest animated movie I know of, and even if you feel the runtime, you don't care, because you are just excited to see what crazy visuals they put on screen next. The film really does stand out among other CG animated films, because when it comes to animated films released in the US, I cannot think of another animated action film that looks like this and has the scope and feel of this. If this movie is showing at your local theater in IMAX 3D by chance, get your ass into a theater right now so you can witness the Doom Part 2 of animation. As someone who loves the artistry that goes into the creativity of animation, this just blew me out of the goddamn water and was right up my alley. Now, when I say go see this movie immediately, what I meant to say is go see it immediately after you watch the first one beforehand. Honestly, if you go into this movie cold without knowing a thing about it, you're completely fucked from the first second and there on out. While it starts off with a recap of the first film, I don't think it's enough to get you caught up on every single crazy detail. I think the only people who will somewhat be able to follow this are people who have watched anime, because again, this feels very much like an anime at points and takes place in a world that you'd usually see in an anime. I mean, even if I didn't fully get the context of something, I can still tell you what was going on because it's the kind of stuff you would see in an anime, and I have enough knowledge of that to where some of this makes sense to me. But if you go in blind, don't come crying to me asking why one character just turns into a cheetah out of nowhere. It just makes sense in this world. Also, you might have been a furry. Okay, so I've went on about how this movie is a visual marvel and I couldn't take my eyes off of it, but how is the movie as a whole? Because unless you're Avatar, visuals don't always save a movie. So I will be honest, while I like the first Ne Zha enough, I didn't love it enough to where I got so excited to go see the second one. Plus, the only time I can make it to this movie this past weekend was 7:40 Sunday night, and this is an over 2.5 hour movie, and I had work the next morning, and keep in mind, after I go see the movie, I gotta go home and write my review. But shortly into the movie, we get this gigantic, epic battle where rips in the sky start pouring lava, dragons start flying everywhere, and demons, freaking demons start coming out of the sky rips spewing lava to fight the good guys. This movie is nuts! That's when I quickly knew, yeah, I already love this so much freaking more than the original. This movie takes everything that worked greatly about the original and boosts that up to freaking 20. While I can't say it's one of my personal favorites, I will say that I had an absolute blast watching this from beginning to end, and it actually made me appreciate the first one even more than I already did. I brought up Doom Part 2 earlier, and I think that is the best comparison. Where Doom Part 1 felt like setup for what's to come, but still had some great action, Doom Part 2 is everything the first film was building up, and it delivers in every single way. The Ne Zha films are the exact same thing. Aside from the visuals, another thing that really makes the movie a spectacle for the eyes are the action scenes. They're all shot perfectly, the choreography is great, and the movements are so fluent, fast-paced, and have such an energy to them that I was never once bored anytime someone was getting their ass kicked. The story this time around was a lot more fleshed out and gave a lot more depth to this world and the characters. Not to say that the first film didn't, I just think this one does it a lot better. From the moment it starts, the stakes are much higher, there are actual threats that are going to affect our characters as the film goes on, and I feel like I got to know some of these characters a lot better than I did the first time. When it comes to part of the first film's story, you've seen that before, where you have a main character that everyone is terrified of, but they all turn around to liking him in the end. Here, you never know what it's going to throw at you and what kind of tone it's going to take next, because it's just that insane. I still like Ne Zha as the lead, and since the story focuses on him having to improve himself, he does get to be more fleshed out, and we get to find out more about where he came from and the kind of stuff he's able to do with his powers. I also liked his kind of buddy-buddy relationship with the fat guy from the first. They have a few great back and forths, and that character also got some of the best facial expressions in the movie, mostly because they just stand out. Anytime there was an emotional moment, it was very effective, and there was one that nearly got me because it was handled so well. Let's just say that there's something that someone doesn't do at one point that you know that they are going to heavily regret later on. The movie also has an amazing score that really works to the film's advantage, especially when it came to the monumental action scenes and those emotional moments as well. Now, as for a few small issues, and some of these might just be personal, so while I could follow the all-around narrative of the movie, there are points where they just throw so much exposition at you about what's going on that I kind of lost track at one point, and it did get to be a little overwhelming. Like, for example, Ne Zha has to keep taking these pills for some reason, and I must have missed that part, because afterwards, I had to pay really close attention to remember the reasoning behind those. But some of that probably wasn't helped by the fact that I'm either a very slow reader, which I am, or the subtitles went by so freaking quick at points. I also couldn't tell at points who the target demographic was supposed to be because while the violence can be very graphic with a lot of blood, this movie is not above a fart or piss joke. One moment it'll be like a fantasy version of the opening in Gladiator 2, and then the next, it'll be a blind man smelling a pig's farting ass. But I'm able to look past all of that because Ne Zha 2 is everything I want from seeing a movie on the big screen. It has the spectacle, the action, the scale, and just the all-around feel you want when you go to a movie theater. This is not just a movie, this is an experience. If you want something up there with the likes of the Avatar films and want to see some amazing visuals, this is a must watch, especially for those of you with an IMAX around your area. While I don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, I still think you need to at least check it out once, even if you weren't a fan of the first film. While I don't think it's going to end up on my best of the year list come this December, I still had an absolute blast experiencing this movie, and you are truly missing out if you don't go see this one in theaters. As someone who sometimes gets tired of only seeing the major studios win in the animation game, I'm glad to see that a movie like this gets all the love and respect it deserves, and since it's already a major hit and is still breaking records as we speak, this is going to be a tough nut to crack when it comes to a new contender for the highest grossing animated movie of all time. On my way home, I was settling on like a high B+, but just for that theatrical experience alone, this is an A-. Now when it comes to if this movie has a lot of rewatchability at home, I can't really answer that right now, but with a movie this freaking massive, nothing, and I mean nothing, beats seeing it on the big screen. Trust me. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, turn on the notification bell, and while you're at it, go follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Letterboxd at Trev's Movies, and I'll be back later with more reviews, and I'll see you then.